Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel Iturbide, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy.
Hey, Miguel Iturbide, back here on the Lights Out podcast, and that's the MMA detective sitting over there, looking detective-y, I guess, pre-detective-y. And
yeah,
we're
appreciate that. Miguel, if you look, first off, we got Jeremy Stevens. I like that. We got Jeremy Stevens, another Midwest legend. Cut his teeth on the independent grind here. And if you look at the background on my wall, you would think that maybe I'm visiting Miguel, but it's not true. I mean, it appears.
I wouldn't have him in my house.
Yeah, I did wake up next to him this morning, and he didn't pick out my clothes. Okay, that's what I'm going to tell you. So, Jeremy Stevens, I've seen him fight live. I want to say 5 or 6 times, and the thing with Jeremy was he was real quiet, real professional, always was on weight, never drama with the ticket money. He was somebody that was just consistent. He had knockout power, but he was also always traveling with a guy like Josh Neer, who was always like, wait, what? Like he wanted to catch you saying something a little slick, even though you're just trying to have like a normal conversation with the guy. So it was like, you never really paid attention to Jeremy, even though he was doing like big things, because he was always there with somebody like Josh, who was going to get your respect, whether you gave it to him or not. He was going to take it. So, yeah, we got Jeremy Stevens coming up, man. It's going to be a trip down memory lane. I know the promotions he fought for, I know the promoters were, and, we're going to hope that he's really open and really candid with us.
Yeah, I'm excited. Just, a crowd pleaser. I don't think that there's, a word that maybe better describes him than that, and I think I'm interested to meet him. I haven't met him, so I like that. I can draw some comparisons to some guys going in. I'm probably going to be wrong. So let's get to it. Mike, any plugs before we get Jeremy on board here with Wright?
Yes, I got April 18th, 115 Bourbon Street on the south side of Chicago. I'm going to be doing commentary. It's April 8th. I want to say April 8th, and then April 16th, I'm in Orlando, Florida for Abu Dhabi Jiu-Jitsu Pro. It's a jiu-jitsu tournament. Please register through Smooth Comp. And I've got a bunch of other dates that I'm going to release very soon. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're growing. Miguel, you see those numbers, Miguel? You see them? Yeah, you watching them?
Good. I'm enjoying it.
Look good. Starting to look good. We might get a $50 check out of YouTube.
That'd be sweet.
Yeah, it'd be really nice. Ladies and gentlemen, like, share, subscribe. Please do it. It's like giving us a tip.
And we got 50 Fight Club member, active fighters still, Midwest grind, all kinds of great stuff coming up. Jeremy Stevens.
Okay, welcome back, Lights Out podcast fans. Thank you very much for paying attention. Another deep dive. We can't wait for this one. Now, a lot of times we get guys, we talk about, 50 Fight Club member, 50 Fight Club. That's our big benchmark. This guy's almost had 50 fights in the UFC. So I've been around for fighting, like we were talking about, 18 years old, unreal. Everybody welcome Jeremy Stevens. How you doing, Jeremy?
Fantastic, brother. Thanks for having me.
Man, like I said, you've always been around for a long time in the UFC, and just always the guy you knew was capable of knocking people out, put on a great fight. I didn't like that stuff because you were trying to steal my bonuses. I didn't like that stuff. So very entertaining guy to watch. I want to know a little bit right now. I always like to start off trying to find out a little bit about your background. Like, what got you involved with the sport? What sports did you play growing up, and how did that translate over to fighting?
First of all, I was watching you and just trying to mimic you because you were the bonus guy. So I was just trying to do everything you were doing, throwing right hands. I was studying you. As far as what got me into fighting, let's see. Go back to probably seeing chaos in the home, a lot of violence growing up. Once my parents split up, my mom, I've been pretty open with that in other areas of my life. She's been a drug addict after her and my mom had split, around a lot of abusive guys. I went to a lot of schools when they split up, and I was getting picked on. I went to having like an air hockey table. I used to ride my go-kart down and like be able to turn off a drum set, to seeing parties at young ages, crazy stuff, waking up, my mom's cleaning the walls 3, 4 in the morning, having to go to school the next day. And I just felt like I was getting picked on, bullied a little bit. So I had to stick up for myself. I was always involved in wrestling from a young age, played baseball, had a lot of older cousins, like to roughhouse Midwest style. If you got lippy, you got punched in the mouth, and just take it from there. So I was involved in a lot of street fights as a kid. And my mom was living, when she was unstable, I lived with my grandma and grandfather, Gene Hildreth. And this guy used to wrestle back in the day, box, old school. And he would watch these tapes. We'd be downstairs and, my grandma would be upstairs, old school days, like ladies stayed upstairs and men were downstairs in the cave. And he was always watching UFC. And, at that age, I'd been in a few fights, hit some guys with some overhands, old school baseball. I would just throw to home plate. And then I would see guys kneeing people in the head. And I've always been around that type of violence, that type of craziness, that psychotic. I've seen people explode. I've seen people on drugs. And I was like, when I saw that, like, knee to the head, I was like, man, I want to do that. Like, I want to be in the UFC. And this is probably, I kid you not, fifth grade. And I was like, man, I was telling people about the UFC, and I followed Mark Kerr's story. He had like a really cool documentary, and he was another guy, Mark Coleman. I started kind of following those type of documentaries and getting into MMA. And I'm like, man, the UFC is badass. And when I was 16 years old, my grandfather that I knew and was talking about earlier, he goes, hey, come out to this bar. It's Toad Holler. I'm sure you guys know about that place, being in the Midwest, or at least maybe heard of it. And I'm like, grandfather, I'm only 16. I don't think they're going to let me in. Oh, I know these guys. He was talking like he was connected. And for sure he was. I went there, and he's like, hey, come on in, check it out. And I just sat there front row, watched them. And he would get up there like with the ring girls and hold up the cards. His name was Mean Gene is what they called him. I'm seeing a different grandfather than I'm seeing back home. He's letting loose. The wife's not around. He's having a beer. He's having fun. And he's like, so, I want you to watch these guys. Cause I was like going to fight right off. He's like, no, I just want you to come and watch these guys. This is what they're doing. Check this out. And right away, just automatically hooked. Came back next week, signed up, fought and won. And that was the adrenaline that I got from there. And my sister was there, my older sister, who I live with later on. She was bringing like strippers around me. She's like, hey, this is my brother, my little brother. He just won. And I got this big boobs in my face, and like the power of the win, the way that I won, people coming up was like, wow, that was exciting, man. Like, you're going to be something cool. And I was just kind of like, oh yeah. Like, I didn't know really what was going on. I was just in the moment. And then it just followed from there.
So Jeremy, let's kind of, if you don't mind bringing it back just a little bit, like your story, which I think your honesty and your openness about it, all it does is help somebody else in the exact same position as you have like hope that they can kind of change the environment that they come from, or at least, rise up from it. You had mentioned you had, some drug issues within a house with your mom. Like, between your mother and your father, why was there no stability there? Like, if you don't mind me asking.
From what I've done with like healing and coming back, I would just say that it's deeply inbred in our DNA. A lot of my family likes to drink, split parents, divorce. They saw things in their home, and things that you didn't talk about as a man back in the day, mental health, or, that shit was pussy back in the day. You just kept your head down, you worked, you provided. And honestly, we didn't have the emotional intelligence, the connectedness. And I don't think like people really truly saw like, there's a secret out there. There's a life. You're going to have a choice, and leadership, I don't feel like the leadership or those types of things were being involved in those households. That's my learning. And I'm grateful for that, because I get to choose to learn from that instead of taking it out on myself and going down a life like, oh, I'm never going to be nothing. I was able to kind of learn from that and realize from a very young age, I don't want to live that life, because I saw the craziness that I saw. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go this route.
Was there a pivotal moment? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Was there a pivotal moment that you understood that you actually had the ball in your own hands and you could kind of dribble it wherever you want?
I think about 9, 10 years old. You know, I was down in the shelter, maybe 11. I was in a shelter with my mom. Like, we had this crazy night, like, got kicked out by her boyfriend. And we're in the shelter, and I'm like, damn, I was just in this house. And I used to live next to this funeral home back on the south side of my hometown named Mike Tanini. And Mike Tanini would give me limousine rides with my mom and have front row seats paid. And I would go watch the WWF. And I got a doll, and it was like Ted DiBiase, and I wanted the Ultimate Warrior. So they gave me we waited and exchanged it. But I don't know. Oh, I kind of got off subject there. What were we talking about?
Cool.
Real quick?
It was the pivotal moment when you knew that you had the ball in your own hands.
So, you know, here we are living that life, and I'm here at this house, and I have a drum set at that house. I'm there's this crazy street, but then we kind of live like off, and there's a hill, and I would take my 4-wheel go-kart. It was like one of them little pedal cars, but it was fast if you were going down a hill, and I would turn in, and like my grandparents would come, and they would chase me like, man, that kid's crazy. I had an air hockey table. I had friends. And then, you know, all of a sudden I'm in this dark life, this other life that I knew nothing about. No one told me about nothing. And here we are at the shelter. And I'm like, fuck, this is crazy. I don't want to be here. And I guess just the faith that I had in God, you know, when I looked outside a window, I seen a cross spinning around, and I'm over here like, why me? You know, like, I don't deserve this. And I just kept my head down, and now I know why. You know, and I'm grateful for that, those lessons, those hard lessons, the lessons that had to learn. You know, our grandparents, our ancestors, different times back in the day, it was a lot tougher. And these days we get to learn from it.
Jeremy, it sounds like, first of all, I feel like I'd be a big fan of your grandpa Jeans. He sounds like a hell of a cool guy. So I like him. Now, it sounds to me like you had a lot of family support when you started fighting. Is that true? You know, grandparents, sisters, seems like everybody kind of knew that was a good path that would help you out. Was that true? Would they get behind you? Because a lot of parents and grandparents do not.
My grandfather seen me street fight at a young age, and he'd seen me fight and kind of get after it. He was always like, man, you got it. And the more he was just influencing me. And my uncle Gino Hildreth is his son. He went to Simpson College, wrestled his whole life, was always like riding low riders, kind of had like a really cool, clean lifestyle. You know, I always thought he was kind of spoiled, but man, he took care of me, and he was cool as shit, body slamming me all the time. I'd go watch him at North High School, and he was wrestling around, and I was like, man, he always had the girls, and like I seen him, he was a heavyweight wrestler, light up the stage at North, and I'd always kind of remember being like, dude, he's exciting. And, you know, my grandfather was really big onto that. Some other people, parts of the family kind of knew I had that, but my dad, he didn't like that at all. I'd come home with like a black eye, and I kind of got into a good scrap at North or maybe on the street. And he was like, oh, I don't want you fighting, you know, like you're going to ruin your baseball career. Like, you know, you need to knock that shit off. Like, he was kind of always on me, and didn't like it. And he would call my uncle and my grandpa, and he's like, man, he needs to knock that shit off. Because my dad was produce, or he still is to this day, for Lofredo. He delivers produce around the city, and people would go to this bar and they would see me fight. They knew my dad, my uncles. They always knew the Stevens boys. They were young scrappers back in the day before any of this MMA stuff kicked off. And they'd be like, hey, is your dad Kelly Mike and stuff? And I'd be like, yeah, my dad's Jerry, you know. And I'd be like, hey, do me a favor, don't tell him you saw me out here. But before the word had gotten out, he was hearing about this, and he'd be like, hey, I know you're down there fighting. How the fuck you even getting in, you know? And I'm like, my grandfather, and he'd be calling my grandpa like, man, I don't want him doing that. And they were trying to tell him and convince him, like, Jerry, my uncle was like, your son has something special. Like, he's like, I'm hearing about him all over town. And he's like, no, it's true. And he came to my first, it was like one of the first events, like a couple down the road, he came to one, and I was super nervous, and he watched me fight. I ended up getting a highlight knockout there, and then like it just kind of changed his opinion. But not everybody approves.
Just for the record, this is like the 2003, 2004 time frame, because doing some quick math here, that's when Jeremy was right around 16, 17 years old. Just for the record there.
Yeah, that's 2000. That's actually like 2002, 2000. 03. I graduated in 04. I was 18 in May.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, where were you training at this time? Anywhere? Or were you just fighting? Were you doing any like legitimate training?
So no, I was just wrestling. I'd go to wrestling, and we were wrestling after high school for a few hours, and then I would go to the Josh Neer's gym. It was Des Moines Mixed Martial Arts. Josh Neer was there because when I started fighting a couple of times, I was coming down, and this is a funny story. My buddies, we had the VHS, and I'm like, I fought like 3-4 weekends in a row. I'm kind of, I got a name around there. People are pumped up. My dad's hearing about it, and we were like in high school, but we decided to drink a couple beers. My buddy's like recording like the VHS, like we're chugging beers. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna fight tonight. I'm just gonna go. Let's go hang out, get some girls, And and we get in there, and then my grandpa's like, hey, I got you signed up. And I'm like, I'm not fighting tonight. And he goes, no, they've been talking all about you. Everybody's excited for you. That's how he used to talk. They want you. And of course, all my buddies are like looking, they're like, yeah, get him. And I had a rough fight with this guy. He was huge. And he was like, he must've been a bodyguard or something. And I ended up beating him. He didn't want to come out into the second round. And I remember Josh, I was so tired from the alcohol or something. Cause I was like, oh my God, I was in panic. And he's like, turn around and look at him. This is Josh Neer. He's never said a word to me this in my life before. I just heard about this guy at this bar. They called him the dentist, and they were telling me, yeah, he kicks people in the face and fucking brutally messes people up. But he's refereeing my fight, and he's like, turn around and look at him. And I was like, oh man, I don't know. And he's like, turn around and look at him. I turned around, started like mugging this guy and like bouncing, and he was just kind of talking in my ear, and I got pumped up. And then the guy was like, no mas, didn't want no more. And yeah, that was old Josh Neer, training with him. And he was like, hey, come on down. We're training at this academy. He's like, I feel like, you're one of them guys, you could probably do pretty good. And I was like, man, I'm in high school right now, bro. I'm wrestling from like 4 to like 6. He's like, yeah, we start like at 6. And I would like come, it'd be like 6:30, 6:45. I had to go from Norwalk wrestling practice to the northeast side of Des Moines. That was like 20-30 minutes alone. I had like a quarter tank of gas and a piece of shit Corsica. And dude, this guy yells at me the first day. He's like, why are you late? Like, da, da, da. He's like, you show up at 6. I'm like, bro, I told you I have wrestling. And we started sparring that day, right after a hard wrestling. And he kicked me in the leg. And it was the first time I ever felt a leg kick.
So
not bad.
You gotta like the Josh Neer style, man. That'd be a perfect style for you to get in with. I think just that old school hard-nosed guy. I mean, once you get in that, you're just a different guy. So I'm glad you went that route first.
Yeah, you got good karma because, like, first of all, your grandfather spotted a little talent, and you're lucky he was right. You know what I mean?
And he's off.
So that's good. And then running into Josh Neer is not bad either.
Yeah, they're two tough dudes, man. Because at 2 points in my life, I was kind of like at that comfortable zone where I was like, no, I'm not going to fight. And I had every excuse not to fight, and I set my intention that I was just going to go and fucking just chill and get some girls, which would have been the easier thing. And then my grandfather pushed me in. He made me go a little bit further, but I was just as crazy. And I actually took that step. And that step was worth it. And then like they saw, because they came from tougher backgrounds, both of them did. And I kind of had that hard-nosed training at first, it's like, let's get outside this comfort zone. And they were both pivotal in those moments. It was kind of landmark times,
Jeremy, it's I try to explain to people that World War II generation, they're just not the same. They're not like any of us, like including yourself and Chris. They're much harder, than your average person.
I agree.
So Josh Neer, on a little side note, we actually had Josh on. We covered his UFC career. He said he's refusing to do the interview unless Lytle was there. If Lytle ain't there, don't bother calling me. That's what he told us.
He needed a fellow fighter there to be able to bounce ideas off. You know what I mean? So he don't want to talk to you, Mike. Sorry.
He just didn't care. Didn't want to talk to us. Don't waste my time. Lytle's there. I'm cool. If not, don't bother me.
That's Josh Neer and the respect that he has for Chris, because we actually grew up watching you and fighting and stuff. And
cool.
If you don't put in work with Josh Neer, he won't fuck with you. And a lot of people think he's crazy and that he's one of the smartest, funniest, coolest dudes I know, but he's loyal. Like
Man, you know, that's how you can tell how cool that guy is. It's like, I remember when Nate Diaz fought him, that's the only guy I've ever heard Nate not talk trash about. He praised him the whole time, about talking about what a badass dude he was. I was like, man, because he recognized just how real of a fighter he is. He didn't care about the stupid stuff. He's just there to try and knock your teeth out, you know, and they understand that. So that says a lot about him, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Neer's one of them guys, bro. You watch him fight, you're like, dude, I got to fight. You know, you have to train hard. Like when I feel like, like when you know you're fighting, like, dude, I got to train fucking hard because that's something that scares you.
Yeah, he's Josh might be many things. He's not a nice fighter. He's not nice. No,
fighting's not nice, man. The sport's not nice. It's a brutal and rough sport, and that's like a proverb. Those guys are like proverbs, bro. Like they're letting you know it's. You want the Psalms, you go to WWF or some other shit, you know?
Yeah. So you had mentioned Toad Holler. January 16, 2004 is your first fight on record. And I think I know your opponent, Justin Erdman. Is that the wrestler, Justin Erdman?
I don't know. Where was that, Minnesota?
No, it was at Toad Holler.
Oh, no, I don't remember that.
I think that's
Justin,
the wrestler.
I don't remember his name because it was like, bro, it was like you showed up and was like gonna fight. That was it. You didn't know nobody. I was 16. The guy had been like 21.
What was your dealings like with the promoter, Chad Mason?
I don't want to badmouth anybody. I would just say it was a learning lesson. That's how this business is. When you step into the game, I realized you're not going to make any money. People are going to take advantage of you. And when you do that, I was really at such a young and dumb age where I was like, you know what, I don't give a fuck. This is pretty fun, you know? But everybody has a story about that. I don't like to badmouth people, but you know, you don't always hear the best things.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you recall any like John Wright at Toad Holler? You fought him 2 weeks later, January 30th, 2004. Does that name ring a bell?
No, some Chad Wright, someone I fought, and I actually got guillotined one time down there, and he's like became a fan for life after we got into a good scrappy guillotine choke me.
Do you remember besides that, do you remember how a lot of these fights went? Were you knocking people out? Were you taking them down and submitting them, ground about? How were you fighting early in your career?
I was a big stand-up guy. Would get them like rock and you know, if they were, most of the guys, they wanted to do stand-up, if they were trying to come back heavy, I would just double leg them at the time, slam them on their head and just ground and pound. I would get up. I was trying to stomp their head. You know, we could soccer kick back then, and you know, elbowing and just trying to do it all. I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. I was just kind of getting into street fights, and as well as it was, you know, this back in the times, people were smoking cigarettes in the bar and stuff. It's a lot different.
Now, Jeremy, you're one of the guys I can ask this question to, because you're talking about being able to soccer kick and all that stuff. I remember when you were allowed to headbutt. Like, the more rules they've developed, I ask people, do you like it better now where you cannot do as much, or do you like it more open where you could have done anything you want? How would you prefer to fight?
I prefer to fight clean, you know, like a good, clean, old school, like Irish fight, you know. I seen an Irish video of these two like young teenagers, and they were just like, let them stand up. And they were once they kind of got engaged, they would break it up, like just stand up, throw them hands, you know. It's a clean fight, you know. Even in like the streets, you know, my dad would always tell me like, don't start shit, don't ever start no trouble. If one of your friends is, you know, getting beat up, you know, like don't jump in, like, you know, let it be one-on-one. Always kept it one-on-one. And I like the cleaner rules. It's better for the sport, better for TV, and it's easy to fight dirty, you know.
Well, just so you know, man, if you ever want, I do commentary for the BKFC. We'd love to have you do some bare knuckle fights.
Yeah, maybe in the future that's the route. You know, I don't feel like my power is going to go away anytime soon. I still love the sport. Want to keep my face a little bit more prettier for a few more years, and you never know, could go that route.
Just an option.
Yeah. So Jeremy, there's a 50 Fight Club member from Iowa, Nwanda Bell. Do you remember him?
From Iowa?
Yeah, I thought he was from Iowa, Minnesota. Nwanda Bell. You actually fought him. I mean, he's super legit. and you knocked him out in the second round, February 6, 2004. Like, you were fighting every other week at Toad Holler for probably about a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know who these guys are. I don't know. I don't know who the fuck they are. That's funny. I was 16, 18 growing up. The world was happening so fast. I didn't know, like, we signed up literally, like, guys were bigger than me, and my grandpa was like, oh, you got this guy. We're just like, okay, signed up. And back then, it was like, you look at somebody, I wasn't trying to get his name.
Is that what it was?
So,
Like
I mean, I have to imagine.
Sam, go ahead.
I'm sorry, your grandfather was cornering you at this point, like the corner man and that sort of stuff? Is that like the family business?
No, he would just watch. My grandpa never cornered me. He would just come back. I'd get taped up, make sure I was kind of. He had his son compete in high school. He kind of knew, just let him be coached. There were some guys that he knew appointed me to that were kind of wrapping my hands. John Halverson, another guy from the Midwest, good friend of mine. He was first guy to ever wrap my hands. And then, I'd have like a buddy or just some goon off the street, one of my boys, like, with me, and just be like, yeah, bro, just give me some water. Like, I don't need nothing.
Yeah.
And that was that.
With a lot of these fights, like you said, you're putting in the time and like they run together because maybe they were easy. Like, do you remember one of them that may have been like, oh, this guy's a challenge, or like that where you were in trouble?
Back when I was
back in the Toad Holler days.
I had a good fight with this kid, man. It was a good first guy. He choked me out one of the nights with the guillotine, and I was fucking him up, and I actually went for the double, and he knew MMA, and guillotine choked me, and I was like super bummed, because then I felt like, I was like, damn, like, this is fucking crazy. And I started fighting again, maybe knocked out another few guys, and that's when I kind of had that one fight where Josh was like, man, you should come. He kind of realized I was a little bit more committed in psycho, just as he was, that I kind of wanted to get better. He saw some good things like my grandfather did. And, my grandfather, he would just kind of come over in the corner, like, you're doing great, like, keep it up. He wasn't ever cornering me. And, I had to follow that type of path. I was just wanting to keep it going, evolving. He saw that, got attracted to it, and was like, dude, come train with us and learn some stuff. And I was like, I already told you in 5th grade, I was already hooked. I wanted to learn some knees and leg kicks. And little did I know Neer was going to be doing that on me, but that's how you could learn.
Okay, so I'm really glad you told us that there was a couple years that you would go and participate that aren't on your record. Were you in attendance for the Houston Alexander Josh Neer fight?
No, I wasn't. I heard it was legendary. I
Josh,
heard it was like action packed, like that. Those are the stories I heard about Neer. Because people would be like, "Man, you're good, and you should fight Neer right away." Because people just saw me with power. And my grandpa, I would go to his house, and he'd be like, he would give me the game plan over there. That's when he kind of gave into coaching, because he's like, "Man, you really got something." He was believing me. He was like Custody Amato to Mike Tyson. He was kind of just inspirational, saw something in me, just kept nodding, just be like, "Man, Grandpa, you're kind of crazy. I'm just having some fun right now. It's pretty cool, huh?" And he was just like, "Yeah, but you're not ready for Neer. You're not ready for Dwight Housley. And, like, these guys are good. Stay away from these guys, but you're on your way. Like, keep it going."
Dude,
so that was that.
Your grandpa is nuts.
I love it. That's going to be me.
He's exactly what somebody like you probably needed. Absolutely.
Yeah. He on his deathbed, rest in peace, Gene Hildreth. He said the most beautiful things I ever heard a man say about my mom on a deathbed, and I never heard a man say things like that to my mom. Not even my father at the time, and it was just incredible to hear that on his deathbed. And he was like, he told me, he's like, "Champ, you keep it up. You're going to be in the UFC," and he'd always give a thumbs up. Always, that was like his signature, and. He told me that, and I, now that I look back, I'm like, man, he saw something that I didn't see, and he was never really trying to like control any part of it. He was just inspirational. He was that guy that kind of motivated me, put a spark in me.
Yeah, it's no. You describe you're surrounded by chaos in life, and he kept it pretty. You're a positive guy, and he kept it pretty positive. That's nice, man. Power of positive thinking.
Yeah, he gave me some stability. He gave me a home. I was sleeping in his home, kind of following his path. He would be taking me to wrestling practice, not my dad, not my mom. they were kind of raising me, buying my groceries and stuff. And he never complained a word. That's how you see me kind of grow up in the street fight. Cause I went to a school that was literally like a block away, and it was called Madison Elementary. And one time, you know, I got into a fight right there in the street. I ended up like socking this dude up on my grandma's van, and they both saw it. And he was like, he knew right then and there, because he would just, you never really, he's just like, hey, you know, I know you're kind of channeling some things. And he's like, I feel like you could channel this into something. And he started showing me them UFC tapes and stuff. Cause he's like, you got it. You got it. You know, he knew I had that savage in me, you know, he saw it. So he saw that. And I felt like he was like, you know, this kid's probably, you know, I'm thinking for him is like, oh, he's probably into something. Like maybe this kid could be directed in the UFC and do it, because he loved boxing and wrestling. He grew up in his life. He had his son compete, and he was heavily involved in it. They loved it.
Yeah. You know, everyone's trying to keep you out of trouble. Don't fight. Your grandpa's like, nah, you guys are wrong. He needs to fight.
You know, getting in street fights is one thing, but then channeling that energy and saying, now you can make this legitimate thing. That's what you should be doing with somebody who's a natural fighter. Put him in the right way. Wrestling, fighting, boxing, something. I mean, channel that. Don't discourage it, because that's who they are, you know?
Channeling is a good word. I use that word to this day, just being able to channel that focus. Like, hey, life's fucking crazy on one side. Cool. Channel that focus. Take it out over here. Something successful. Take some action and be grateful for that, because now you know what you don't want. Go after what you want. It's worth it, you know.
Well, let's talk about your first pro fight. That's a big step from fighting at Toad Holler. Obviously, it's January 12, 2005. Downtown Destruction. You stayed with Chad Mason. You stayed with Chad Mason as a promoter, and you fought a future 50 Fight Club member in Ted Worthington.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that fight?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember that fight.
How'd it go? How'd it play out?
Wow. You know, speaking of my grandfather, he had passed away shortly before that, a couple months, and me and Red were going to fight before, and something happened. Everybody had respect in the MMA community, the underground. Even Ted reached out. I can't remember how maybe he called me, or I can't remember, maybe a MySpace or something. He shot me a message, was like, hey, your grandfather was amazing, because he had fought in that Toad Holler, and we were going to fight. You know, we were kind of both going around at that same time, and you know, he dodged me back at Toad Holler, because I was like, bro, I'll fight you, like, let's go. And he's like, nah. And you know, we had the chance to match up. My grandfather died, and you know, he tells me that on his deathbed. And you know, a couple months later, the fight goes on. It's in the middle of winter, Iowa, which is the best time to ever have fights, because everybody's like tired of being inside. They want to go see a fight. They're beer drinking goons. And they knew that me and him were a great matchup. And, you know, I think my grandfather had a hand in that. I ended up knocking him out, uppercut, 33 seconds into the fight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Ted's no joke. And I think Ted, at that time, wasn't he training with Josh Neer? Or was that?
Yeah, he was. And you know, I kind of had to step aside, because in high school, my baseball, you know, I was wanting to play baseball, and I was really good. And, you know, they're like, man, if you keep this up, you know, you're not going to go to college. Like, it was Norwalk. So it was like a country town, and it was so small. There's like only 180 people that graduated, and they were like going to like call in on them and be like, yeah, there's like minors in that bar and stuff. So they told me to kind of just chill and stay away from that, you know, and I rocked that out until I was 18. And once I was 18, ball didn't turn out, and I just started banging right there. And, you know, and then, you know, I was fighting Red Worthington. You know, my grandfather had kind of passed away, and I was like, you know what, man, I don't think this working shit's for me. I think my grandfather was right. And my other grandfather too, he was like a real estate guy too. And he was like, man, you have potential. Like, he was the one telling me, like, I think you should quit your job and go after your future. And he's like, you know, there's money in this. And he kind of showed me actually how to put together like sponsorship packages, go out, introduce myself, not just be some fighter, but actually go up to, you know, big businesses. Hey, what's up? My name is Jeremy Stevens. You know, nice to meet you. This is what it is. You know, I'm showing my highlight tape, which like I knew I got somebody. As soon as I show them my highlight tape, they'd be like, oh, whoa, like, all right. They started getting excited. And I'm like, all right, man, what do you think about this? You know, and people get to like support you, back you up, and sponsor you. And then next thing you know, they're at the big events. You know, they bought a table for you, and you're cracking skulls. There's no better feeling than that,
man. You know, you described your upbringing as somewhat, I mean, obviously chaotic, and full of turmoil. I remember you on the indie scene as someone real quiet, easy to deal with, always on weight, no problems. Like you were completely drama free. Whatever you were experiencing in your house, you never brought it into the fight game, at least, you know, that I could see.
Yeah, I think that's where I was like, you know, I'm gonna get paid. That channeling came in, that spark where, you know, my grandfather knew I was going through some crazy shit, but I was able to kind of channel it and just, you know, wrestle, do these things that I love to do, and kind of have those outlets where I could pick somebody up, slam them. I like that stuff anyway. I was always living room wrestling, watching Jean-Claude Van Damme. I felt like just I would channel that, and then, you know, like it comes out in the fights. People wonder why like I'm so brutal, or, oh man, he's a violent fighter. People fear me, or they come at their best when they know they're going to fight me, because I love that type of violence. And that's like my only outlet. Like, you're going to pay me. I feel like a contract killer. You're going to pay me to do what I love to do. And I can go in there and knock this guy out. And you guys are going to give bonuses. You guys are going to do this, like, plus everything that came with it, you know, as a young man and growing up. And the fact too, that my father's sitting front row, that he didn't like this. And, you know, a lot of people like, oh, the fighting doesn't pay bills. And I was like, man, I don't really care, because I'm 18 years old. I have my whole life to work, you know? It's like, I don't really care at this point. Like, F you, like my grandpa says, I'm pretty cool. Like, I'm going to keep rocking, you know?
Mike, we talk about sometimes how, you know, MMA or a lot of different things, but it saves a lot of people, and it does, you know what I mean? This could definitely be a situation where you could have seen where somebody had all the opportunity in the world to go the wrong direction, but because he fell in love with this sport, it pushed him in the right direction, you know? I definitely think this is one of those situations.
Yeah, Jeremy, you'd be in jail without MMA.
Possibly.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I've been there. It's not good times, but they're learning lessons, and those were short ones that I could just be like, you know, yeah, I need to keep my head into the grind, you know, keep your head down, work hard, and learn from your mistakes. You know, it's like, oh, and if you fall down, pick yourself up right away, you know, recognize it and keep moving and grooving.
So Chris, look at his career trajectory. This is where it's real interesting. So that's January 15th, a big local rivalry. It should be a really hard fight. It was pretty easy, you know, for Jeremy. His second fight is 3 days later, January 15th, 2005, in Minnesota against Gary Percival. Who was the promoter for that?
I can't remember. And that guy beat me, I think, as a choke. It was a good fight. I had staph infection. Had staph, was sleeping. Is that a guy right? I lost that fight.
No, it says you won by KO.
Maybe that's a different time. There's a guy maybe in Minnesota. I went one time. I had a staph infection. It was like, it's a couple. I took it on short notice. Had a staph infection. Crazy fight.
Was it Brad Kohler?
I don't know the names. I was up. I don't know the names because I wasn't even from there, and I actually went up to Minnesota a couple times and fought, and almost got beat up over there in Minnesota too for fighting and winning, and people don't like you over there.
Yeah.
Sounds like a Brad Kohler event.
Yeah.
I got a question for you, Jeremy, because it sounds like you're a pro wrestling fan too. Did you catch that Shayna Baszler was on some of those cards with you up there in Minnesota?
What's that?
Did you see that Shayna Baszler actually fought MMA on some of those cards with you in Minnesota? She's in the WWE now as one of their women's fighters.
Yeah, I had no idea, a clue of nobody. I'm just a young, dumb kid who got invited up to Minnesota to not get paid and go in there and fight, almost get my ass kicked, have a buddy drive up. We didn't even stay in a hotel. It was crazy. We just drove up. I even drove up with Red Worthington one time. We fought side by side and got into some good scraps together. That's fun.
Yeah, you got a bunch of fights that aren't on your record. So that was called Jungle Madness. I'm positive that was Brad Kohler. You also mentioned you didn't get paid for it. That checks another box of it possibly being his event.
and also,
there's a lot of those out there, you know.
Yeah.
Also, the jungle name in Minnesota, like Minnesota's not really famous for the jungle. Sounds like that Russia in Michigan deal.
The event he did, yeah. So your next fight is 2 weeks after that, February 2nd. So we're going 3 fights in a month and a half now. Downtown Destruction 2, Chris Khalib.
Downtown Construction.
Yeah, do you remember that?
What happened in that fight?
You knocked him out first round, 144.
That was in Des Moines, right?
That was in Des Moines. Josh Neer was the main event.
Yeah.
You don't remember any of these that well, huh?
No, I do. That's funny because Chris Kali, he actually went to my high school, and he was like, my opponent backed out, and he was like, "I'll fight you." He's like, "Oh man, people came to see you," and he fought me that night, and I ended up beating up a friend of mine. He wanted to try out MMA. It was funny. Me and him used to actually living room wrestle all the time back in the day too. You know, we'd get it on, freaking just wrestling, training.
Yeah,
that's a good friend right there.
Because they'd be like, "Hey, show me an arm bar. Like, what are you doing here? You know, like, what are you looking for?"
That's a hell of a good friend right there. That, like, you know, I'll jump on the grenade, man. Your guys didn't show up, I'll fight. Okay.
He was such a fan, and he was such my boy. He goes, "Bro, people came to see you fight, bro. I want to see you fight." He's like, "I want to do it." He's like, "I just want to try it. It's gonna be fun." I was like, "Dude, don't do this, bro," because I was like, "If we're gonna fucking get in there, we're gonna throw." He's like, "No, they came to see you. They love you." And he's a cool guy. He's came out to some of my fights and came out to, you know, coming back home, celebrating, you know, and he's been around, and, you know, he has a beautiful family now, and good guy right there. He was somebody in high school that I'll always remember. He was a good friend to me back then when I needed somebody.
Mike, that's
really
the guy too. That's the guy that watches Jeremy on pay-per-view now and goes, "Yeah, I fought that guy. I fought that guy."
Yeah.
Almost had him. I was winning the whole time. You know, the first minute I had him, right?
First minute, 33.
Yeah.
Red, you know, I knocked out Red. We became really good friends and training partners. You know, one time I triangled him in the gym, and he actually picked me up like Rampage. And I think he was gonna, you know, I thought he was gonna let me down nice, you know, and then dude, he slammed me down hard enough. Like, me and him got up and almost got into a fight, and, you know, we both got kind of kicked out of the gym. But you know, we were friends with these guys, or somebody would come up to me and be like, "Man, remember we fought back in the day, you know, you knocked my ass out, you know. But fuck, man, I've always been a fan and watched your career. We always knew you were going to go somewhere." Like, because I think, you know, people brought that presence. You know, I was training with Josh Neer and going up to the Miletich camp. We were just quiet nose. You know, you wrestle, you go out there, you do your thing, your hand gets raised, you run back, you know, just enjoy your time, you know, and keep working. So I think people realized and saw that focus from a young age that, you know, I was trying to go places. And that's why I was fighting 3 days later, 5 days, 2 weeks. I was trying to be in the UFC at 18. I wanted to be there. I was mad that Josh Neer took John Halverson to corner him. I was like crying in tears because I was like, "Bro, I've been putting in all the training. You're just going to dog me like that? That's fucked up." Like, I was in tears, you know, because I was like, I deserve to be there. I want to go there. I want to know what it feels like. And you know what? John Halverson ended up taking me in his corner to a UFC fight. And I'm kind of glad he did that, because I got to kind of realize, I'm like, bro, they just put a camera in your face. Everything else is just, it's like the playground, you know, like, let's get into this.
Yeah. When Josh Neer left for Miletich Fighting Systems, how difficult was that for you, being a teammate of his? Because it was like you two versus Iowa, and, you know, you weren't capitulating. You weren't going to Miletich. You were trying to start your own thing.
Yeah. Hang on one second. Yeah. I'm gonna have to get off by 4:10, fellas. I got to pick up my daughter. But what were we saying? I'm gonna go back to that question where Josh kind of left Miletich.
Yeah, when Josh Neer left for Miletich, how difficult was that for you? And why didn't you go with him?
I did, actually. It just kind of took me a while. You know, I was a young man at the time. You know, I could barely get around the neighborhood because I was just fighting and scrapping. You know, people. You know, I was trying to pick up a job here and there, just to kind of get like some where I can go back to training, grab some gas. You know, I was really kind of living those moments. I wasn't living off the government, but I was broke as hell, just trying to get $1 every day just to kind of go to training. Someone ended up getting a place over by there, you know, so we were just always over there every day training. And he went up there, and I was like, you know, I was bummed, you know, but I'm like, you know what, like, he's fucking doing it, you know, like, he's actually going for it. And I'm like, ugh, that inspired me. I'm like, dude, the big bro left the nest, and I know where he's at is a serious place. Like, I'm trying to get up there. Once, like, I kind of got my stuff together, got sponsors, got my name noticed, and was doing well for myself, I was going up and visiting him a little bit at a time, you know, and then we'd go out, buy groceries. I was eating his nutty bars in the middle of the night. He'd wake up, get mad. You know, he had his daughter, JC, you know, around that time. He was with this girl living in the apartment, just trying to live the dream. There I am on his couch, training with the best in the world.
So 1 month after this, so I mean, you can kind of see like how almost frantic he is, just getting fight after fight after fight. You fight a stud that many people avoided in Chris Mickle at this time. It was at Downtown Destruction 5. I think it was for a title fight. March 2nd, 2005. Do you recall that first meeting with Chris?
Yeah. Yep, I do.
Want to walk us through it?
Yeah, it was that guillotine choke. You know, here I am. I'm like, you know, I want to fight. I'm doing great. And, you know, Josh Neer, he told me, he's like, hey, man, you know, you should probably wait a little bit. Don't fight this guy. He was kind of the one. And I was like, I didn't know how to accept that. I had an ego back then. Fuck that. Like, I'm going straight through this dude. Like, I'm going to be the guy to beat him. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm going to knock him out. He's going to feel it. And he's just like, dude, he's good. He'll kind of weather the storm, just kind of chill. And I didn't listen. I went down there and I fought him. Like, I just reacted on emotion, and, you know, it proved to be right. He guillotined me, and I just took it hard as hell. And that's when Josh kind of invited me back to come train with them guys. And Timmy Gorman was there, a lot of like Midwest, D'Amico Deeds, Victor Moreno. And that was like when the gym was good, and they invited me to come back. And that's like when I really I took that right there. I took that loss. I was like, I'm not the man no more. You know, here I am back to back, knocks people in. I'm like, man, like, this hurts. Like, I want to get better. Like, I need to get better. Like fuck that. Like, I'm not going out like that. Like, I need to keep this going, you know? And that's when I went back and I started working my ass off and training. And then, you know, we had 2 more great fights after that loss, you know, and he taught me a lot. And he was a guy that it was going to be me or him in the going up into that training with Miletich and possibly get on a big show, you know?
Yeah, 2 weeks after that, Chris, he fights Shane Blanchard in Extreme Cage Combat. What do you recall about the promoters, Nick Gamst and Jeff Paul?
Just funny guys wearing that fucking those rhinestone pants and tight t-shirts, and you know, they're the guys paying. I didn't really know them that well. I didn't really give a shit. My dad was at that fight. You know, I was puking in the background, and Josh Neer and Victor Moreno are calling me a pussy, like, you're gonna be all right. And I remember just like, I don't know, it was crazy.
Yeah, so Nick Gamst is the promoter that paid Nick Thompson with a boat because he didn't have his win money. So just, if you guys want to listen to another Nick Gamst story, you know, the Nick Thompson interview is a couple of them.
I remember the Go Thompson. That's funny.
Yeah. So at this time though, like, Josh Neer and Derek Noble are the main event. And dude, Jeremy, I'm just gonna be real honest with you. Like, we hear Toad Holler, you know, I'm from Chicago. We hear Toad Holler, we're like, dude, it's just some stupid bar fight where, you know, hillbillies go and they beat each other up. Nobody is coming out of there that's going to be any good. When Josh Neer beat Derek Noble, it was like, wait a minute. There's a real special talent up there that's going to break through, because, you know, as all 4 of us can attest, Derek Noble was no chump, and he finished him.
Yeah, that's true, man. And I think that was a testament to Josh, man. He would nose down and grind, bro. He was all about hard work and putting in something extra, and he didn't have a whole lot around him. And that's kind of where I learned. I'm like, man, American Top Team, great facility, you know, all these gyms. Like, no, bro, it all starts right here. And I remember Neer just kind of putting that, he was that leader. He was like, no, I don't need nobody to show up. Like, let's put in this work. And he did it, man. It was crazy.
Yeah, it kind of put him on a national radar, that win. And you take 5 months off after that fight. Is there a reason?
I think I probably maybe got paid a little bit of money. I don't know. Wait, I mean, what year was that?
It was 2005.
Yeah, I'm a knucklehead running around Des Moines, probably like at the bars, just grinding, dancing, you know, training a little bit, putting in a little bit of work at that time, and just living my life.
Okay. Yeah, I thought maybe you got locked up, dude. I'm not gonna lie, I guessed.
No, I didn't get locked up for that like amount of time. No.
All right. Mike. Sorry about that, man. You fight William Shutt August 27, 2005, Extreme Cage Combat Trials. They are kind of positioning themselves. The XKK was a fantastic organization at one time in terms of like bringing along high-end talent. And this trials was going to define like who the toughest, you know, at 155 was in the Midwest. And, you know, your first opponent was William Shutt.
Yeah, scary dude. You know, actually, that was the one where I was puking because he had a tattoo on the back of his head. And I remember telling my buddy, I was kind of laughing at him. I'm like, dude, look at that fucking killer you got to fight over there. And he's blasting these pads, and he's like, dude, that ain't my opponent. That's your opponent. And I was like, oh, you know, and like, I remember just being real nervous. And that was the first fight, actually, my dad had gone to, not the other one. And I was just super nervous, throwing up in the back. And Josh and Vic were just training me. And they're like, oh, you've been training for this. Like, you got this. Like, you've been putting in work. Like, you're going to go out there and kill it. Man, I went out there and just demolished Will Shut. Man, I actually did the knees that I was wanting to do to somebody for a long time. I was able to land a hard liver kick and just brutal knees to Will Shut's head, like leaving him a gash. Like, what was that Eastman and Vitor Belfort? I remember that fight. And that's exactly how it went. And I was like, I think I guillotine choked him maybe for the win. But I remember kind of being like so proud of that moment because I was like, man, I've been watching this since 5th grade. I finally just did it right in front of my dad. My dad's just looking like, the hell, you know, I guess people were talking and, you know, like, I guess they were right. That was the first time he was kind of like, okay. And the way that the crowd reacted too, you know, it's always been very exciting and put on those types of sick fights just naturally. So they appreciated it. And I think my dad kind of then was like, wow, I guess what they're saying is true. Like, okay, I get it now.
Did your mom ever go to your fights?
No.
Don't worry, my mom never went to one of mine either, but she just afraid. But anyway, Will Shut, he's a tough guy. He spent time in Thailand. He's a good fighter, man. I mean, that's a quality win at that time in your career. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, he's a great guy too. I see him around the Midwest every now and then. I haven't seen him in a few years, but anytime we click up, I always say hi to him, and he's always very respectful and likewise. So I think he's from Creston, Iowa too. So I know that area.
Yeah, he was legit. So 5 months later, one of the coolest organizations to come along in a long time forms. It's like John Halverson, Ryan Haas. I can't remember who the third person was. The Midwest Cage Championships won February 11th, 2006. And you're the main event against Kendrick Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
Is that hard? Because that was actually a pretty high-end event when it was kind of running on all cylinders.
Man, that was sick, bro. That was a huge at 7 Flags. I mean, I had packed the house with, there's probably over 3,000 people there, and it's dead of winter, cold as hell. And the music was playing, the theater was right. It was like the stage had gone up, you know, and it was incredible, you know. And there we are fighting, and, you know, I'm fighting for the title. You know, I was getting paid like $700 to win the title, and it was amazing. I was like a proud moment.
Hold on, you're a huge ticket seller. Please tell me you're getting a percentage of that, because you should have been getting a good percentage and making a decent check that way.
Once I won the belt, I kind of realized I remember them guys kind of saying something, you know, and I was like, man, you know, I was talking to Josh, and Josh kind of worked out a percentage like, hey, this kid works hard, because they were trying to wazzle dazzle me a bit, you know, and you know, like that's the way the Chad Masons, these guys, they kind of go up around kind of fucking just getting over on people. I mean, it still goes on to this day. You know, you hear about fighter pay and all this bullshit in the UFC. It's like, that's why I knew from when Chad Mason, like when I went up to like Minnesota, going up there, you know, not getting paid. I remember like, I know what type of game I'm getting into, but I didn't care because I loved it, you know, and that's the real reason why I truly passionately went at it. I didn't care what other people were doing. That's on them. Shit happens, you know, and that was a life, you know, it just is what it is.
Yeah, so you win that fight by KO 146. Like, dude, you're just murking people. Like,
yeah, that's when I started getting those ticket sales, though, because that's when I was like, you know what? And then I was a good ticket seller where I was getting like 35% of my ticket sales. And I was going around deploying, backpack, going to inside the clubs. I would go to my buddies, all my friends, you know, all the hustlers, all the gangsters in town that were hustling, you know, doing the thing. Those are the best. Always bought T-shirts, always bought tables, always came to the thing, after party bottles. I mean, it was lit in Des Moines at that time. People really wanted to see fighting, and that too, man. I had people just come up one time. I was selling behind, not even fighting. Just give me $20. I said, keep it, man. You're on your way. Like, keep doing your thing. I had a lot of belief and a lot of love around Des Moines around that time. So things started moving up from there, and I was like, oh, we can actually get some money here. You know?
Yo, Jeremy, you acted exactly the opposite of what you experienced in your house growing up.
Yeah,
like,
because
that
just
cycle,
negative,
that's what you say, and it's obvious. I mean, you're obviously correct, but saying it and doing it are two completely different things. And like you really handled yourself a lot different than what you had experienced growing up, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like it's a way of being, they say. Instead of being like complaining about stuff, like, no, start being the $1 million man. Start getting up, running, putting in the work. Be a way of being. Start being nice to people. You want to be treated nice and respected. Start respecting people. Go above and beyond to open doors for people. And I always felt like, I read the books, Law of Attraction, self-help books, self-improvement, because I was like, I'm not very fucking smart, but I'm going to learn how to kind of better educate myself. My grandfather was good about my other grandfather, Vern, he was good about like real estate, going up, approaching. I was going out on sales with him. He's fully suited and booted. So I kind of saw a business side too, from the just the hard work. Like, yeah, it takes the hard work, but there's also a business side. And great grandfathers, great leaders. And I felt like I had to be a way of being in order to get that. You want to start kicking it at the Palms, top of the hotels in Vegas, nightlife fights, start acting like as if you are, start putting in work. Like people like, how do you get sponsors? And I'd be like, be in the gym, put money in the gym. And they'd be like, well, no, how do you really do it? I'm like, I grind, I'm in the gym, I win. If you win, then you don't have to really go out and search for it. Like, stay here. And that's just reading books, trying to educate myself, because I knew the life that I didn't. I just felt like I started having to be a certain way in order to kind of get to where I wanted to be.
Yeah, it's breaking the cycle. Yeah,
well, Jim, you're talking a lot about things I like. You're talking about just different making choices, and I wonder sometimes. I've seen a lot of people who have been in a bad situation, and not many of them do. Let's say 1 out of 5, go the opposite direction. I always wonder, what is it about individuals that make people? Some of them can rise up and and it's all that personal choice you talk about. Like, I'm going to do this, and I don't like this lifestyle, so I'm going to do it. But I always still wonder what it is that makes certain people work harder and other people make excuses. I mean, to me, the best thing you can ever do is quit making excuses about the way your life is, because there's always going to be an excuse. Once you quit doing that, the whole world opens up. But I always wonder what makes people figure that out and do it, because most of the people don't. But you did it. I know probably everybody here did it, but a lot of people just can never do that. Does anybody ever figure out what is it that makes certain people go, I'm going to change that? I just can't figure that out.
I think it's the way they relate to pain. I feel like, you kind of need pain to grow. It's like, it's a way of life, or patience and waiting. And, kind of like my grandfather, Neer, you got to get out of the comfort zone. You got to push past and really, really do that. I think if you can relate to pain and accept the pain, the hardest pain, and accept the way, like everything else after that, you're like, bro, everything else in life is fucking easy, like from true pain, like, not getting paid by somebody who owes you some money. That's not true fucking pain. True pain is like your mom's at home, she doesn't come to your fights. Yeah, you don't know where she's at. You hear like on the streets, I saw your mom the other day. That's true fucking pain. And then, I feel like you got to make a choice. Some people, there's empathy out there for people, but it really comes down to a choice that you're going to have to make. Either one, you sink or you swim. It's the strongest is going to survive, the one willing to adapt, make the changes, grow. I mean, it's more than just a simple answer. It's a lifestyle of adjusting to pain and experiences in your life. Like, you're going to have a choice, and there's probably 2 choices: a good choice, good life; a bad choice, bad life.
I think he's right here. I think a lot of people just avoid that pain. But go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, Jeremy, it's such an easy thing to do, though, than just sit at the bar stool or use drugs and just numb yourself and continue numbing yourself for years. Anybody can do that. The hard part is to break that cycle. That's what a real man in your position does.
But what I find with, even when it comes to like healing and growing and regenerating after the healing, is the fact that like you have to just allow yourself to go there, make that choice, allow yourself to kind of be in that experience and do the work. Like, if you're not willing to really do the work in healing or or in fighting, or if you don't really try to want to go and level up, most people just don't want to do the work. The people that don't do the work and they want to sit back and slack and do bullshit, they end up living twice as a bad life. Like a coward dies like a thousand deaths, right? But the people who actually just bite down step by step, and I never make fun of anybody on their journey. If they just wake up today at 46 years old, who says you can't be successful at 46 or 48 years old and wake up and start a fucking business day by day? It's like, if you have today, you have a beautiful life, you have a lot to be grateful for. Let's just start looking into these choices and doing this work. And there's programs, there's other stuff to get out there, but again, you have to do the work. If you don't do the work, don't expect $1 million, you know?
No, you can't. If you keep doing the same thing, you can't expect something different. That's it.
Exactly.
Your rematch, your Chris Mickle, what was it like going into that? It's Midwest Cage Championships 4. Trying to get that loss back.
Yeah, that was huge, man. That was life or death, because he was kind of talking a lot of stuff like, oh, I'm going to beat this guy. I already beat him. At the weigh-ins, he's like, shine that belt for me. And I remember like looking him in his eyes, like coming in shape and being like, I told him, I was like, I'm going to murder you. And my buddy just started kind of like, like that's crazy. You know, he's like, and we went and we had a huge battle that second fight, you know, and he was kind of laying on me a little bit. I got up and just started firing like some right hands, left knees, and ended up knocking him out. Vicious left hook. He goes out. It's kind of controversy. And then we follow up, do another fight. But
why was it controversial?
Because I knocked him out and he kind of like fell down. But when he fell, he kind of like double legged, but he was like all wobbled up. But even before that, I was kind of rocking and the ref had stopped it. And as he's going in, like I punched Mickle, but the ref's like trying to get in the way, because you see like all on camera, and Mickle's his head goes back and he just kind of falls down. And you can tell he's kind of out of it. And he's like, I'm like, does he realize? Because I had stopped. I was like, does he realize? And the ref's like trying to pull him off, but he's still kind of like trying to do the double leg. And I'm getting off like celebrating. And that was like controversial. He's like, oh, I wasn't out, you know, like, let's run it back. And I remember being in the background and his teammates, like everybody was like talking shit. And I go, hey, we'll run it back. Like, I'm a man, like we'll run it back. Like, I don't know why you guys are acting like a fucking big deal. There's another fight. We'll run it back. And I remember Neer being like, you guys better run it back now, because if you don't run it back now, Jeremy's getting better. Like as time goes on, like he's going to lap you up. And they're like, all right, run it back. And we decided I shook Chris's hand as he was kind of wobbled still in the back, talking about, oh, he's all like, oh. And I was like, yeah, I'll fight you, dude. I was like, I'll shake your hand on it. And we ended up fighting again.
So you didn't fight again that night, did you? It was a different day.
Different night.
Okay,
Yeah,
I thought you were running back right then. I was like, hell yeah.
We're getting to the big stages a little bit, you know, the underground big stages.
Yeah, Jeremy, I was at this fight. That fight was over. That fight, yeah. It was over. Like there's no controversy there. I think it's more feelings than actual, you know, physical things that took place.
Yeah, that's what it was over. In the back though. It was like they were kind of like mad about it, and I was like, okay, I get it. You know, like we'll run it back. Like that was a sick ass fight. You know, let's do it. So, but I knew I was getting better, and that just kind of gave me more confidence. So I was like, then here we go again. Ran it back, and that one like really put the stamp on the deal. And that third rematch, we got in. I had actually hurt my rib. John Halverson bruised my rib, and I was telling Josh, I'm like, man, my ribs hurt. He's like, just roll, do some jujitsu. And I remember turning and being like, he's like, man, it's really that bad. I had to ride the bike the last like week and a half, 2 weeks, and just kind of hit the bag. And I couldn't really do much. I remember carrying my laundry upstairs. My rib was all jacked up, and I fought him, and people thought like I was tired, but I was putting my hands on my knees trying to breathe, because when I was like up in my stance, I really couldn't, because Chris had hit me there. I had put my hands up and he ripped a good like right hook to the body, and I was like, oh, like my rib was just jacked. And man, I had good ground and pound takedowns in the stand up. I don't think, maybe he took me down, but I was like getting back up. We ended up going to the fourth round. My coach after the third round throws my belt, throws my stuff, and I'm like kicking it out, like yelling at him, like, what the fuck? Like, bring my water. Like, he's like, I thought it was 3 rounds. I'm like, it's a 5-round fight. Like, and then like the it's chaos, right? And there's the trauma that my childhood. I'm like, oh, well, like, and I'm like, I'm not even like breathing right. And I'm like, dude, I got to go another 2 rounds. Like my motherfucking coach could barely give me a water break, and I didn't even sit down. And then I ended up spinning back fist, knocking him out like super bad. He was out for like 5.5, 6 minutes. And it was bad. You know, I went up, like shook his hand. He was like clearly out of it. Reminded me of when I fought Marcus Davis too. He was just kind of still out of it. I remember like back then, my family had like Kodak pictures and their family, like my family be here hugging, and like in the background, you'd see him like fingering like Chris Mickle shirts. And we fought, and, you know, like, again, you know, all that noise was going on. I went up and I shook his hand and I said, hey, you know, I really appreciate this time because you made me get better. You're a guy I trained for in the gym. And he wasn't really listening to me, but his dad was kind of there. It was kind of intimate. They're kind of giving me looks, but what I said, then they kind of really appreciated it.
Sometimes those things they
didn't
hear
ask for a rematch.
It gets intimate.
Yeah, and you know what? Sometimes they hear those things like a day or two later. You know, not right then and there. It takes a few days to kind of let your emotions settle down.
Oh, yeah.
But Chris Mickle, for everybody that might not know who he was, I think this fight is the one that changed him. Like, he really wasn't the same after this. I mean,
there's two back-to-back hard knockouts, in my opinion. I don't think it's controversial. He was taking some heavy blows, you know.
And like, just so everyone knows, like, what type of like individual Chris Mickle is. Travis Fulton was over at Dave Strasser's, one of Dave Strasser's events. Dave really needed a fight for a guy from Washington named Anthony Hamlet, who's pretty talented in his own right. Travis Fulton says, hey, I think I got a guy. He's like 3 hours away. We're like, you know, why are you even bothering calling this individual? He drove, wrapping his hands in his car on the way, parked his car in like a handicap spot with his blinkers on, runs in, barely makes it in, beats Anthony Hamlet, goes and moves his car and comes back and gets paid. Like, Chris Mickle is legit. He's legit.
That's gangster moves.
Now,
Yeah.
Jeremy, sometimes, you know, you talk about right after a fight, the emotional aspect of it, man, like the adrenaline drop is so great. It's just like you're saying things you don't even realize. I think what Mike said is very accurate. Sometimes you don't notice, really even process it for about a day. And you think, did that guy tell me? And you don't really think about it. Can you attest to that? Like a time when you won or lost, where you're just like, man, what am I even talking about? Because I know that's happened to me before.
Yeah, when you lose, man, I feel like you really feel like it's complete opposite. You feel unloved, you know, like you hear boxers and the famous guys like only had like 2 missed calls and both were from my mom or something like that, you know, and you have those moments like, damn, you know, I thought he was like on his way up, and then like it doesn't happen. Things don't happen the way people expect them, and you're in fights with some of the best in the fucking world, you know, and your legs hurting, your calves hurting. These are hard lessons. Some days when you're walking up the stairs and your kids are like, hey, let's go to the park, and you're hobbling up the stairs to go just kind of get ready, and you know you're sore, and you're getting rub downs in between the hanging out with the family sessions. It's a long time to process things, and there's a lot of like unloving moments that you're like, fuck, you know. A lot of that doubt creeps in, like, what the fuck, am I really this good? And then you just, you know, once you heal up, you kind of like, you sat in that darkness for so long, you're like, I'm okay now. You know, like, all right, here's the light. Here we go. I'm actually healthy. Thank God I'm fucking healthy. I can walk up my stairs. And then I started getting funny because I'm like, oh man, look at me. I'm springing on my stairs now. You know, you're ready to go to the gym again. You know, you're kind of like, all right, I lost. Like that Chris Mickle, he choked me out. All right, that fucking sucked, but I'm all right. You know, it's like, Happy Gilmore, 365 more days the next hockey season. Ooh, that was hurt, but I'm all right.
After that Mickle loss, like your situation's a lot much more different than most people on either coast. Like you live in a neighborhood where they live, eat, and breathe fighting. It's like, it's kind of like going to, you know, where Shootbox is and see like, and like they follow the fighters just like they would in a small city in Brazil. So after you lose to Mickle, what's it like going around town after that?
After the loss?
Yeah.
Oh, I just went straight to the gym. I was going around, hanging around with Josh Neer and going straight to the gym. And I was listening to Lil Wayne, Money on My Mind, Stick to the Grind. You know, I was just listening
Tuning
to
it out,
like
huh?
that. Yeah, I was like at home, probably living with my sister, just training. Like, dude, I got to beat this kid. That was like all that's on my mind. There was nothing. There was no distractions. I wasn't hanging out drinking. I was going to the clubs to hang out with the homies and sell them t-shirts and tickets. And then I was bouncing out like on the weekends. Like I kept my head down, made a lot of money that fight for myself, and just took advantage of the opportunity. And I was nervous as fuck because I was like, man, this guy's already beat me. So it's a hard one.
So where we left off was Chris Mickle, but in between the Mickle trilogy completing, you fought September 22nd, 2006, Universal Gladiator Championship in Louisiana against a guy who's 10-4 with 3 of his losses with guys that went on to the UFC, and that's Aaron Williams.
Yeah, I remember that.
How hard was that fight?
I knocked him out, like, I think probably with under a minute or a minute and a half. And he was leg kicking me pretty hard. He had like 2 or 3 good leg kicks, and he tried to throw him like all spazzy right off the bat. I just try to keep my cool. And he threw like 3 leg kicks. I think on the third one, I just threw an uppercut, and that was that. He was all wobbled up. I went on the attack. Ref pulled me off, and he went face planting down, and I had gotten like a belt in Louisiana, and it was a crazy show too. That was like a lot of people were there. I remember Melvin Gillard was like in the UFC at the time, and he wasn't there, but man, I had a great time in New Orleans. You know, my cousin's in the service at that time. He had met some people down there, and he's like, hey, you know, my cousin's Jeremy Stevens. But no, we actually heard about him, and we would love to have him. And he actually got me paid by this guy named Ricky, who ended up coming up a few years later. And I stayed at my apartment and trained. I took him up to Miletich, and he got like his nose broke. And a couple of days later, I went back, picked him up, and cool time. That was a good time.
Was that your first time you were actually flown to an event, you think?
Yeah. Yep.
And that, you
Was
know,
it
that's a
your first
good
time on
step
an
when you get
airplane?
flown, like, I'm making it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was crazy. I was like, man, I can't believe I'm doing this, you know, and going down there, it was beautiful. You know, I never experienced anything like that. That was a great experience.
Was that your first time on an airplane?
I think so.
Oh my
I think so. I think honestly it was. Yeah,
Nice.
that makes a lot of sense. And I remember actually I used to text my older sister, who was like my mom, all the time. I'd be like, hey, I'm leaving, you know, like just, you know, and just always check in. Yeah, I think that was my first time on an airplane.
Nice.
Did you have a corner or did you go alone?
Yeah, I was down there with Josh Neer and my cousin Jake, who was in the service. And, you know, I met them guys. He had fought on that card, and he had fought before me, and I cornered him, and then he cornered me. And it was Josh Neer. Josh Neer was the only person I'd cut weight with. I can't remember what my cousin was doing. He did something else, and me and Neer went to the maybe he was there, but I remember me and Neer just being in this gym. He opened it up down in like Louisiana. It was like no lights around, dark. Just opens up this crazy garage, and it's like, here's a couple bags of equipment. Just threw some plastic garbage bags, maybe a sauna suit on, and just got to work.
Damn. All right. So you go from obviously go to Chris Mickle. You really put an exclamation point on that fight. And at this point, I was telling Miguel pre-interview, on the independent grind, you and Josh were always, you know, super close, obviously. I mean, that's fairly well documented. But Josh was always the guy just kind of like listening to conversations, trying to catch somebody mouthing off a little bit, because Josh loved to fight, like in the cage, outside of the cage. And I mean, he really would lean into a fight, to where you were more the quiet guy, and you were doing some really obviously incredible things, but I think you were almost overshadowed by Josh because of his personality at these events.
Oh, he was the man, bro. I was just taking notes. You know, I have 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. You know, plus, you know, I grew up in the street where I was always, you know, you kept your mouth shut and you stay on the grind. And watching him do his thing, and I didn't feel like I needed to brag or boast. You know, it's just kind of the way I grew up, well-mannered too. You know, it's I never felt like that in a sense. So I was always I knew I was skilled in violence, and you know, I was just like, give me an opportunity, I could knock you out. And that's
wait.
You
know what? We've got like a lot of noise happening. Miguel, is that you?
I don't know. Let me see.
Yeah, that's you, dude.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So I apologize, man. So skilled in violence. So with Josh Neer, like, it's almost like a 1-2 punch that you guys are kind of coming into these events with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
Neer was the man back then, but he was always just a quiet dude. And I always liked that about him because it was like Robbie Lawler too. I'm many things at this time. I'm a brother, I'm a son. And, even at a young age, I just kind of kept my wits about me. And we always just showed up, and because we knew like once those cage doors close, like I can actually be kind of that rowdy dude. I can take some of this fucking pain, this anger, this shit that I'm going through, and I can deal it out by just bashing you and beating you up very skillfully, knees to your head, elbows, kick into the liver, like things that I'm working on in the gym. I'm like, I get to go do to somebody, and that guy's trying to take me out. I'm taking this as like, they're coming at me with everything. People, I'm like, bro, I show up to fist fight you and brutally knock you out because I'm a KO artist. I want to stick to my basics, show you what I've been learning. And I know if I'm throwing 100 and something punches around, more chances of me are winning. And the more that I'm doing that, the more my pay is going up. People are recognizing me. It's getting easier to get to my goal, which is the UFC at that point. That's what my mindset was.
So I have a question here. At some points when you would go over there and train like with Miletich, give us some like, how was that training? Because we hear legendary fights like sparring, just tough stuff. How was it when you go over there?
I feel like that was some of the best training in the world, and I honestly miss it. It was, you came in, the guys like Spencer Fisher and Josh, they would run like 20 minutes at like incline, and they would pick up the pace. They would start it out, and they were running fast. They were running hills, or they'd just go run around a little bit, and they would come in, and like, we would just get after it. We would train hard discipline, good technique, grind it out, come back to some technique, grind it out. And then we would just do like strength conditioning, plates, running across the mat, pick them up, mat returns. And it was like championship worth ethic, and then on the weekends we were running sprints up these hills and it was everything and anything. And it was fun. It was highly skillful training with Pat Miletich, Tim Sylvia, Robbie.
Who's your main training partners?
Jens Pulver, Zach Mickelwright, young up and comer. Neer's there, just crazy. And I'm just like, oh, this is it. LC Davis. Those guys at the time.
How did the sparring go between yourself and Jens?
Man, it was awesome. There was a time where I was so scared of that guy. He would be I would go early, like 15 minutes, which I always thought was on time, being a little bit early, 15 minutes. He would already be laced up, jump roping, not gloved up, but with his like pads on. He'd be jump roping. And then he would glove up and just kind of shadow box. And he was always just bouncing around like this. And they're like, hey, you got to spar Jensen. I'm like, fuck, man, this guy's ready. Look at this guy. He's fucking way ahead of me. He's like, it was Jens Pulver. And I'm just this young 18-year-old kid. I remember a couple of good sparring matches with him. One time he hit me in the liver and I turned and I was like, oh. And I looked and Pat Miletich was like just walking around, checking, make sure no one's bumping into each other. And he's like, what are you going to do? And I remember just kind of like looking at him, and then like I see Jens just kind of like teeing off, and I'm like, all right, I'm kind of defending myself. And then I'm like, all right, he's not knocking me down, I'm good. And I just start fucking bombing back, boom, 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 and got that respect. Finished out a round, and I remember Pat just being like, good job. And I remember going to the corner like later that day, dude. I remember like that was a rough one. I even like more sparring. And just kind of putting my head down, like, dude, like questioning, like, what the fuck am I doing getting my head beat in? Like, is this really for me? Like, this is crazy. And then another time he had split my head open. I had a headgear and we're going, we're twisting hooks. And he hits me with this beautiful uppercut and it pisses me off. And I didn't realize I was bleeding at the time, but I can start to feel it. And I started kind of turning it up on him again, just being like, man, this motherfucker hits hard as fuck. In my mind, I'm thinking, man, this guy is like fucking me up. And like, I had those times where I told you I'm in the corner and I'm like putting my head down and I'm like, dude, this is crazy. I don't know what I'm doing here. Like I'm getting my head beat in. These guys are way better. You're doubting yourself. Years later, I'm at a UFC event. My wife's like, hey, there's Jens. She's like, didn't you used to train with him? And I'm like, oh yeah. I run over to this other side of the section. I run down there during like a UFC event. It's like an intermission. I run down there. I'm like, hey, Jens, what's up, man? You remember me? And And he's like, oh yeah. I was like, bro, you're one of the hardest dudes and that I ever sparred and hit. And he's like, me? He's like, I remember you, dude. He's like, I always knew you were gonna make it. Like you hit hard as fuck and you're still doing it. And I go, bro, why didn't you tell me this like as a kid? I was like, I almost gave up, man. He's like, oh,
it helps,
no, bro. He's like, I loved it. He was like, you were fucking tough, and gave me my props. And I never got that props from him a long time ago. That's just kind of a funny moment, how far back that shit goes. And he's actually comes down here and he does that Cage Warriors. He does the commentating, and I see him out here, and I tell him really good like barbecue spots, places to go to, like Korean barbecue, and like where you grill it up yourself type.
I love it.
Yeah, good guy.
Man, I mean, there was a long time, I think the Miletich camp was the best in the world. I mean, seriously, in the world, that the best
Iowa
camp.
tough.
Yeah,
Iowa tough.
Seriously, they had so many
Sylvia,
UFC
Robbie
fighters
Lawler,
and champs. It was unreal.
Me, Josh Neer, like, dude, legends came out of there. Like, still
Huge, Horn, Tim Silva. I mean, Jesus, everybody there was tough. Like, they had so many UFC champs and just top contenders, and it was like some little place, and it was unbelievable.
Yeah, I remember, like, I think Lee Murray trained there and went and trained there, and I remember Pat, like, we'd go hang out, bust balls, and they're like, yeah, he's a pen pal to Lee Murray. And I was like, I fucking love Lee Murray. He's a gangster, right? I always legit. And I heard that he had knocked out Tito's tooth in like a strip club. And I was like, dude, this guy, he's the man. And he was like, yeah, I write Lee Murray from like prison and stuff, because he had trained. And, he's like, he's got some time. So I just make sure I remember him he was writing that letter out. He had like 2-3 pages, really took his time before practice and all that kicked off. And then, Pat be walking around sparring himself. I remember he was a good jab, low kick.
That's the thing about Pat. Like, you can't fake that. You can't fake it. Like, who knew that he was pen pals with Lee Murray? But you know what, man? The guy's sitting in prison. Do I agree with everything he did? Obviously not. But, he's taking time out of his day to send him a letter, international.
Yeah, am I gonna give up on him? This guy came in and put blood, sweat, and tears, and he reached out to him, and he wasn't talking about bank robbing or anything he'd done. He was talking about, man, I really enjoyed that time training with you. He was I took that shit for granted. It's like, now that I'm looking back, I'm sitting in here, that I'd really want to be over there. And you were a good friend. This guy's trained fucking extremely hard, bro. And that team, it brought world champions in. Mad people trained there. And Pat, to that day, even when that gym was like kind of going under and, everybody was trying to save it. Ben Rothwell, he was a real positive guy, hardworking dude. He'd always be like, man, try to pay your memberships. And they tried to keep that gym together. Pat was still grinding to that day, running miles, putting it in, looking shredded. And I kind of remember being like, you know what, I'm 18, like I'm in good shape. I can go home and eat an ice cream bar, but I want to be like that motherfucker. That guy's actually out working me right now. Like, he's old, he's got like gray in his beard, but he's shredded as hell. And he's a world champion. He's got a gorgeous wife. He's got a gym. He's got world champions coming here. And I'm like, I want to be that guy. I want to be that type of leader. Pat's a great dude.
So do you split your time between Des Moines and San Diego?
Nope. This is my house, man. We live out here in San Diego. I've lived out here 12 years, maybe almost close to 13 years. Bought my homes out here, and I go back to Iowa with my family and go visit. And, we always have a place to stay at the in-laws, my parents, my sister, stuff like that.
And your sister must be incredibly proud of you, man.
Oh man, she's the best in the world. She's a saint. She's got a great heart. Her and my brother-in-law, hardworking guy, works out at John Deere. My sisters worked at the same job, and she's just amazing. Got 2 great kids, and I learned how to love through my sister. I learned what like a good, healthy relationship was. I never knew how to treat women or what true love was. Like seeing a real loving couple. My sister was like the first to graduate out of our family or go to college. So these kind of like, she was a leader, always looking after me. She saw stuff going on in her life, and when she grew up, she's just a few years older than me, and she'd look after me, and then she ended up kind of raising me. I lived in her house a long time, rent free. Times I wouldn't have money to pay. She's always paying groceries, and just she's truly amazing.
If you've been to
She'll
therapy,
travel around and flies out to wherever I go. And she's excited that I'm going to PFL. I think we're fighting down in Florida. She's like, oh, she's like, I was already supposed to go down there like May 4th, which is around the date. So she's always there, man.
if you've been to therapy,
Oh yeah, I've done counseling. I've done emotional intelligence classes. I still continue to put myself in emotional intelligence classes, relationships, discovery, really, really crazy, gnarly experiences in those EQ classes. And I've done counseling. I continue to do the work. I continue to be a positive role model leader for my kids. You know, can't tell them you got to lead the way.
have you ever macrodosed on psilocybin?
Oh yeah, microdose.
Have you ever macrodosed? You ever taken a deep dive?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
I think that's important. You get to really know a lot about yourself in that situation.
It's a teacher. I done that stuff even after I gone through the EQ class, and I was really clear on my intentions coming out of those experiences. You can't explain it because you don't ever want to ruin it for somebody, but it's intense, and you're there for 4 days, for 1 week, got a week off, and you're back there for another 4 days, and then you go to 100-day leadership, which is basically like you're on calls like this all the time, making time. Oh, you're busy, dude. Millionaires go there. People, Chips a Hospital, Ed Clay, Scott Nelson, on the mat guys. You know, they've gone out to these classes, and those are guys that I'm looking up to, leading the way out there, just changing the world with. Because they went out to the EQ class and they're like, you know, what do you want? He's like, I want to help and build cancer, like freeing clear energy, eating right, healthy, and everybody in America kicked him out. And he was looking in Puerto Rico, all these other countries, and he found one down here in Tijuana. And off of just going to that EQ class, and we all go, like, we were talking about these mental battles, and like I was just struggling with a place in life, like after the Aldo fight. Maybe it was a midlife crisis, depression, I don't know. But when I went to this class, it really saved my life, and it brought me aware on so many things. I mean, I basically cried in my wife's arms, apologizing for any of the shit I may have caused, you know, growing up in this world. You know, it's a fight life. There's women out there. I was a piece of shit, right? And I was never been that type of vulnerability in my life. And I feel like those experiences, that knowledge, that awareness, it's like the Tony Robbins guru stuff. And I just kept buying into it because that 100-day leadership, I noticed my life changing. I've noticed getting better, my relationships. I'm talking to my daughters in a certain way. I'm being a certain way, talking to you guys like this. It's enlightenment in a sense. And then I took the doses and, you know, done some crazy stuff, and I've had awesome experiences. And I come out of there and I'm like, I died in that experience. And now I'm like hugging my kids. Like, I'm excited about a softball game. I'm looking at the sunshine. I got off alcohol, put 10.5 months space in between me and alcohol on that awareness. And I'm like just enjoying the smaller things in life. And it was truly crazy because I always like associated drugs, chaos, but I was like, I don't want to get into like cocaine, say for example, but I'm like, I've heard good things. Joe Rogan talking about DMT, microdosing. And, you know, out here in California, it's a different lifestyle. And people talk about that and the trauma. And I've done military combat training, and people have spoken to me about this. Even big business millionaires I've had dinners with have like, man, you seem different. You seem on that type of level. And like, they're like, you ever done psychedelics? And, you know, they told me that I was like, man, some of the best times. And they'll always leave me with like a good message. Like, hey, really spend time with, like, your kids are 12 and 10, really spend time with them, take them on dates, and always drop that good knowledge, you know, off that learning.
Jeremy, man, I'm really, this is awesome to hear, because I know a lot of times I see people really, you know, I don't want to say one dimensional, but they're focused on what they're focused on. But it seems like to me, you're focused on the important stuff now. You know, you're growing, you're matured. It's like, man, not that fighting is not important. It's very important. But I mean, you see the big picture in life, and that makes me really happy to hear, man. That's fantastic. A lot of people just can't get out of the fighting room, and that's everything in their life. And it just seems like you're well balanced, man. That makes me very happy to hear this.
Yeah, I went, like you said, I'd probably be in jail. It's probably what I suspected. If I was walking around like the heathen inside the cage, you know, on the streets, I'd be done. I like that about Tom Brady. So it talks about compartmentalize. I'm a father. I'm a husband. You know, I'm a football player. He's like, as I got older and I got more efficient with my body and training, when's the time to turn it up? When's the time to really grind? he's like, in between that time, I don't have like stay on top of my training a bit, but I don't have to put all that time. Now, like I'm taking my kids to Disneyland. He's doing all that. Now,
that's kind of what led to me wanting to retire as well, was just the fact that, my kids were getting older. I was like, man, you ain't getting this time back. I mean, I spent my whole time trying to find UFC and then be a full-time firefighter. I was like, I can't do it anymore. You know what I mean? So I get that. I wish I could have figured out a way to do everything, but I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, I always was inspired by you doing that, and thank you for your service out there. And I like the way that you did it.
Thank you.
I heard you talking about your daughter somewhere out here in LA in college, and congratulations on that, man. So you know what I'm talking about, and what I'm trying to build. And I'm trying to watch my kids play softball at UCLA, and they're training with Alyssa Garcia that's out there right now. Her father's a great coach of ours, and helps me and my kids. And these are the type of things that I want. It's like, I can't go around being a fighter all the time. There was a point where I was like that. I was grinding all the time, but as you get older in these experiences, the more that you get, it's the more learning. And fighting's a really good teacher. I don't want to go when I'm 50 years old, looking back, having to call a friend or my dad, like, hey, I apologize on my deathbed, or to my daughter. It's like, no, I'd rather just learn now, and
35, you've got so much life ahead of you. Like, I think the life lessons that you didn't choose where you came from, but what you took from it has allowed you to be a lot further ahead of most people your age.
Yeah, Charles Darwin said it best. It's not the smartest or the strongest. It's the person willing to adapt to change. I felt I was very adaptable, coachable. I've been coachable throughout the years. That's what's kept my longevity, keeping an open mind. Like, one way is not gonna, there's more than one way up the mountain.
Yeah. So here, we only got a couple fights left, and you make it to the big show. February 21st, 2007, Titan Fighting Championship, Norman Alexander.
Where's that at?
Title Fighting Championship. That's in Iowa.
Maybe I fought. Was that
right before? It was right after Chris Mickle, right before Vern Jefferson. Vern Jefferson is a dude that's got like tattoos on his head.
Yeah, that was a Muay Thai fight.
Oh,
that was a Muay Thai fight, actually, because this kickboxing coach that I was kind of working with, or kind of was around, he was like, "Oh, I'm having a," or actually, I wasn't working with him at the time. He knew Josh and reached out and was like, "Hey, you know anybody who fight in a Muay Thai fight?" And Josh was asking, and like nobody in MMA wanted to do it. And I was like, I'll do it. And I was like, January, because I was like, I'm going to keep fighting. I might as well get paid this month and fight like, I'm like, I know I'm not fighting no beast in Muay Thai, not from around here, but I'm like, fuck it. Like, let me try this out. Like, I'm just going to go hard on this guy. Whatever. We're coming in cardio, heart, like, let's go. And we took that fight. It was a Muay Thai event.
Yeah. And then Vern Jefferson at the Green Sparks full contact fighting. This dude looks like he's right from the prison yard.
Yeah, but actually, a good thing about him, he's a native, and he still talks to me to this day. He's a cop out in like Iowa. So I can't remember somewhere.
He's a
like
cop.
Yeah, they own like native land. Like their family's like deep into the native land out there, and he's always actually been a big fan and a supporter. He's tatted up. He trains like he does like MMA back home and kind of combat for the kids. So he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he looks like a legit, very, very hard opponent. And you get through him with the knockout first round, 358. I think the only thing at this point in the independent grind for yourself is you've obviously got the power. It's just how you set it up. Sometimes, it takes a little bit longer, to throw the right hand, but you are constantly throwing it. Like it's all you really threw was fastballs at this point.
Mostly, but the thing is I was actually landing like flying knees at that point and kicking pretty hard. And I was learning that they're ducking so I can come in with knees. And I like the brutality of MMA where you can give me 3 elbows or 500 punches. I'll take 3 elbows. I feel like I'm very brutal and I know where to put them. Like I have like good, whether they grab my wrist, I'm slicing and dicing. I kind of like that brutality of the sport, or landing like the big upper, the big right. If I can catch him with a knee or a head kick too, I was always looking for stuff like that. Even at a young age, it was like baseball to me. Oh, I see the jab coming. That's like, you know, a fastball, get out of the way. Oh, the big right hand. That's like a big changeup block. You know, I was always, I think my eyesight, you know, it's really hard to strike out playing baseball, and I love baseball. And I feel like that kind of always kept me intact and kept me with an open mind. Because then as I developed throughout my UFC career, it's like I have an elbow, a left hook, a flying knee, a head kick, an uppercut, you know, you name it. I a spinning back fist I got on my resume. It's not just the right hand, but the right hand is always there too, you know.
Right. So who was managing you at this point?
Where was I? I think I started getting managed by my cousin Jake, who got me down there to New Orleans. He had a cousin who was around in the game, and he's like, "Oh, I know he's pretty good at this stuff. He can do it," and he was doing a pretty good job at the time. You know, I just got to a point where it was only like local. We can only do so much. I started moving on as I started growing. But at that time, you know, he was getting me good sponsorships. You know, $2-3 grand now. I'm getting paid for a sponsor, and then another $2 grand over here, $1 grand here, couple hundred here. I'm like, damn, I got groceries, rent paid. I got gas now. I'm training a little bit harder. Like everything's like kind of leveling up, you know, slowly but surely, and things just started leveling up.
Wow. Well, you get the big call, May 26, 2007, UFC 71. Where were you at when you heard the news that the UFC was signing you?
Man, you know, I was at a Glory fighting in Iowa, and it was like the first show, and the second show was going to be me and Alonzo Martinez, like in April. We were going to fight. We were two out of the Midwest, bring a lot of fans, a lot of excitement. I mean, I'm talking Omaha, Nebraska was coming over to Iowa, or Iowa was going down to Omaha, and it was like another me and Chris Mickle. It's going to be who goes to that next level. And what I thought was the next level was the UFC. And that didn't happen. And I ended up hearing the news. My manager at the time's like, yo, UFC called, Den Thomas's opponent pulled out. And I knew who Den Thomas was. He fought me. And then like, I think a fight or two later he fought Kenny Florian. Then he was beating Florian's ass. He blows out his knee, ends up having to like take a choke out like second or third round. It was kind of devastating because Den was doing really good, and I knew he was tough, so I knew it was going to be a great fight. But once again, just like when Neer's like, "Hey, bro, don't take it," I'm like, "Dude, I'm knocking this dude out." I'm thinking like, "This is my chance. This is my opportunity." Of course, everybody was like, "Take it." At this point, this is the UFC. You got to take it. And I went out and passed out I had bought like 100 T-shirts for like that event. I ended up going downtown to Des Moines, Iowa, where that event was. They had like cameras there, and I passed out over 100 shirts, signed autographs, signed pictures, all for free out of my bank account, and basically just told them that I was going to the UFC, and just got like a lot of love, and just hung out with my whole town that night. You know, it sucked that, you know, we couldn't pull that fight off, but you know, everybody's pretty happy for me.
Yeah. So
I was on that reality show with Den Thomas. That dude was a beast, man. I mean, he was so good. I mean, he was really good on his feet, but people don't realize how good he was on the ground as well. And I remember that fight with Florian. Yeah, he was doing really well, blew his knee out. And he kind of falls down, and Florian's kind of hitting him. He was just kind of looking like, I can't do anything. I can't. It just, that's unfortunate for him, man. I felt terrible for him.
Yeah. Den Thomas, man, even to this day, I see him around the UFC, and we always shake hands and chat it up. And he's like, dude, you're still doing it. He's like, he'd always like, man, always looking out after you after we fought, because I didn't know who the fuck you were. Now I do. And he's like, now I'm a big fan. And he's like, I've enjoyed watching you over the years. And anytime I've ever gone down, I helped out Jorge Masvidal. He's always been around and just been a great dude. Someone I was always happy that beat me, you know, not like, I'm like, man, I hate that guy.
Super cool guy, man. Super cool guy. One of my favorites.
Great
so
guy.
after Den Thomas, you lose by armbar. I mean, that is something easy to stomach, but the UFC also tells you, go get another win, and, you know, we'll think about bringing you back. How hard was receiving that phone call?
No, you know, what's funny, man, is UFC didn't cut me, and UFC didn't say, go get another win. I asked them because I only made $3 grand fighting Den Thomas in that first UFC. I don't know, Chris was probably around the same pay, $2 grand, $3 grand. It was 3 and 3 to show, 3 to win. I got $3 grand, and I took a pay cut from all the fights that I had been training, sponsors. I'm like, dude, I'm making more money in Iowa than I made in a UFC fight. I basically enjoyed a free hotel. I got to fight in UFC, get my name going. But I was like, do you guys mind if I fight here like another month or two? They're going to put me on the shelf. And I'm like, and they're like, yeah, just don't lose. Like, you cannot lose. And I was like, say no more. I'm not the guy that does that. I'm like, I'm going to go back. I'm going to fix the car up, tune up, and I'm coming back stronger. And they allowed me to do it. And that's crazy. And then I won. We hit them up. Like, hey, we won. Cool. Come on back.
Yeah. So that was July 27th, 2007, MCC 9. Halverson. MCC was one of the most legit, like their social media, like all their videos, everything that they were doing was so cutting edge that they were probably the biggest organization in the entire Midwest when they were kind of at their peak. And you fought Nick Walker, who was 3-0, and you knocked him out in the first round. Took you a little while to get there, though.
Yeah, I remember how the MCC was built with Ryan Haas and John Halverson. We were sitting, hanging out. I was hanging out with Josh Neer. We're in an apartment, and Ryan Haas is like, yeah, I bought a cage. Halverson's like, you bought a cage? He's like, yeah, I already bought it, full cage. This is my idea. Halverson kind of been around the business a little bit. They got to head, and they linked up, and boom, they threw on that event.
Yeah.
Jeremy, I had a similar thing right there. I got off the Ultimate Fighter, and I asked for one fight out of my contract. And they told me the same thing. No problem. Just don't lose all your cut. I was like, all right. Well, luckily, the people around me got me set up a nice, easy fight. It was a Midwestern fight. You know, I looked at the guys like 11-6. I was like, hey, this guy sucks. Happened to be Matt Brown. So it was a much tougher fight than I planned on, man. I remember halfway through the second round, I was like, God, what is going on here, man? I finally submitted him. I was like, I don't want to fight that guy anymore. And then his next fight, I think he's in the UFC, you know, and just did really well. But I was like, yeah, I can tell right from the beginning, this guy's going to be a handful for people.
Yeah, that's the thing about MMA is you I always tell people, like, sometimes, you know, you see people like, yeah, I want to do it, you know, and you just kind of tell like, you're not really made for it, because I'm like, bro, you got to be careful, because sometimes you run across the Matt Browns, you ain't out here playing around, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know until we did a deep dive with him, and like probably like his last 5 fights before he fought me were all like really good UFC level guys in their hometown, you know. So I'm finding this guy's like 11-5, but he's fought 15 tough guys and he's beat 11. I mean, also like, you know, you got to be, you never know who you're going to walk up on there. You got to be careful. If a guy's got a deceiving record, sometimes you got to be careful.
Yeah, he's still in the UFC too, man.
I know.
He says he and Coleman are very similar, him and Mark Coleman. And he's like, yeah, I think I got about 4 or 5 more years. Like, what?
All right, good for you.
Yeah, hey, maybe,
but that's
another guy.
Tom Brady said maybe he wakes up tomorrow, maybe he doesn't want to do it. You know, people always ask me that, and I go, you know, I feel great. My body's amazing. You know, I've always kept my body super healthy. I want to go another couple years, max out on this money, make sure I have enough cash flow to cover everything so I can fully just retire. But I'm like, you know what? Maybe tomorrow I'm just like, you know what, man? Maybe I just want to be with my kids. Maybe I want to go do what Chris does. Maybe I want to go be a firefighter, a police department, you know, DEA agent, like whatever it is. Maybe I just want to take some time off. Who knows? But, you know, keep it rocking. And then, you know, one day you'll know.
Exactly. Jeremy, the thing is, you've put yourself in a position where you're what, 35?
35, yeah.
All right. So the shit that we're talking about in the era that he fought in, it doesn't equal your age. Like, you've put yourself in a position like you're always kind of maybe a little bit ahead of yourself in terms of what you're supposed to be doing, comparatively speaking to your friends. But you've just said a whole bunch of things, and you've got an entire life to live that you could absolutely do.
Oh yeah. Opportunity,
you know?
baby. That's the thing about this game and this life. I'm just grateful. You know, I continue to stay in a good presence, a good mind frame, and there's just opportunity all around. That's why I just said maybe. You know, there's always opportunity. Yeah.
All right. So let's you know, Chris, my fights, I've got him exactly where I want him. Obviously, his next fight, he gets his first win in the UFC, but we'll probably do that at a future date. I'd like to throw a couple names with people that you've trained with and just give us a little insight into them. The first one, he's one of my favorite fighters, Tony Ferguson.
Oh man, animal, technician, hard worker, talented, go-getter, athletic, just a hard-working grinder, man. True freak. You know, a lot of people I don't feel like understand him. He's very loyal. He's very tight-knitted family guy. Just talented, creative.
Yeah. He doesn't fit into any box. You know, he made his own.
Yeah, no, I kind of like that old school training. He'll have you like hitting woods and stuff. And I'm like, dude, that's actually back in the day. You look at Jack Dempsey and all these people, it's like old school. Like you grind to make your shit harder. Then he goes out there and he's actually trying to throw them elbows. Like, you know, people are like, no, because he's actually doing it. He's really that dude. He's a technician because of that. It seems crazy, but you see them ties. They're kicking down these trees. Everybody's like, why is he kicking a tree, not a pad? But then you go in there and you're kicking a dude 1 or 2 times, those guys are done. And, you know, it's a creative genius. And fighting, we're not like a simple math equation, like 2 + 2. Tony's a lot more confusing than that. I would just say he's a lot more to the equation than what you actually would normally get. If you can't understand 2 + 2, you're not going to understand Tony Ferguson.
No. Have you ever worked out with Dominick Cruz?
Neer, Ferguson.
Yeah, yourself. Yeah,
Dominick's been my longtime training partner.
Okay, San Diego.
Yeah, it was. I know you're in there, but you guys are kind of different weight classes. Have you guys sparred and worked out in the gym?
Oh yeah, sparred, worked out, cut weight, been around, partied. You know, grown, did the EQ class. You know, he's been a leader and someone I always looked up to. A lot of people always I credit. I'm like, I like to get the Josh Neers, but I decided, you know, like the way Dominick Cruz was fighting, like on both like stances, I remember kind of feeling dumb, like how does he do that, you know? And I'm like, but in MMA, this is going to start evolving. And you notice he was the first person to do it. WC, Chad Mendez, everybody's doing this shift, which then I started looking into Jack Dempsey, Roberto Duran. I'm like, man, this is like kind of old school stuff, but it works. What happens, you know, if like you get your calf kicked off, you got to switch legs, you know, you got to adjust. And I realized that was the way MMA is going to go. It's going to go, what do you call that? Where just, you can find from different actions, you know, people are hitting spinning stuff now these days.
Jersey Joe Walcott.
But I knew it was going that route.
Jersey Joe Walcott in boxing broke every single rule. There's a couple footwork videos of him on YouTube. They're absolutely mind-blowing. It's just those old school cats, man. They just, you know, they did it themselves. You and Dominick also have a very similar upbringing.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's not surprising to me that you get along so well with him.
Yeah, he went to that EQ class too. You know, we were always dealing with stuff. And Dominick, I feel like, is a way of being now that we haven't seen him ever. You know, he was back in the day, he was kind of a jerk to people, or what I would come off as. Or a lot of people could see him that. I felt him in that ways. But he's always been that guy. He's going to give you the honest feedback. But he never really opened up too much. You know, he's always kind of just sheltered, real quiet. You never knew what was up with Dom. As we've gotten older and grown and developed, you know, we've allowed ourselves to be vulnerable, grow, share our experiences, share our growth, and look up to one another and learning, man. You know, seeing him being injured, like there was like another like psychedelic experience. Was like, damn, I'm living life. Like I'm able to train. Like I'm grateful, and I'm bringing over a bowl of pozole, and my buddy's knees going like this. You know, so that was like always kind of good to be around and be thankful for too, is my health, and that in fact that I'm this guy that can fight 3 days later, a week later, a month later. Wild.
How was your dealings with Joe Silva?
Fantastic, man. I love Joe Silva.
Really?
I love him. He was my favorite guy to deal with. I always had to deal with him and Shelby. Me and Shelby don't really get along. I don't feel like we just don't vibe. We don't click up. Me and Joe Silva, he was a fucking man. He came and seen me after I knocked out Dennis Bermudez. Him and Sean Shelby come up. My dad's there hanging out, and they just wanted to talk to me because about, you know, the missing weight. I failed to make weight. You know, it was just a problem. You know, I was really sucking some weight. Learning about myself, you know, and having to do things orally and through hydration, and the fact that I started learning after that fight to really pick up my run regimen and find different ways of training, and then hard stress your body out. And they came up and come see me, and we had a really, really cool talk. And I always was real super cool with Joe Silva. He was a man of his word.
That's super cool. Chris, I mean, you got any Travis Fulton stories? Other than that, I'm out. Do you got any Travis Fulton stories from back in the day?
Me or
you? Yes.
Oh, no, I haven't. Travis Fulton was a guy around that I always seen in pictures, super big dude. I heard recently it was like a sad story what happened to him, but he was always around, and someone that was around the MMA scene. I remember seeing posters of him. I'm like, dude, this guy's jacked. He kind of reminded me of my uncle Gino, bigger guy, Jack, had the traps, and I never seen him fight. Not one time. He was always around the area. I didn't really see him train. I kind of seen him around a bit, but never saw him fight. Maybe one time I did see him fight, but it was something I couldn't even remember.
Yeah. Chris?
Well, Jeremy, just can't thank you enough for your time. Love your story, man. I really love where your head's at, where your head and everything. I see a lot of guys who, no matter what happens after your fight career, you're gonna be good. I just love hearing that. You're gonna utilize this as a platform to do other amazing things, I believe. And this ain't going to be the end of your story. This is just a part of it. And I love hearing that. So thank you for your time. And anytime, if you ever want to go watch a bare knuckle fight, I'll get you tickets, man. Get a hold of me, and I'll love to have you come sometime and watch.
Yeah, Chris, you have my number, man. Stay in touch, dude. Lights out, light on, dude. Big fan.
Hey, my man, I appreciate that.
I never meant to steal your bonuses, bro. I was just really trying to mock you because you were that guy people wanted to see, and they love that type of character that's going to bite down on his mouthpiece and go forward. And you did a lot of great things, man. It's happy to see where you're at too. Thank you.
I really appreciate that, man. It means a lot. Thank you.
Mike, great questions, man. That was a hell of an interview, bro. Like I said, I don't do interviews. That was awesome. It kind of brought me back, touched my heart. So thanks, brother.
Why don't you do interviews? You've got such an incredible personality. It's an amazing story.
I like doing interviews with people that I know, and if you're asking good questions, stuff like this, maybe I will reach out a little bit more and do some more interviews while I have some time.
Dude, I mean, it's like when our interview kind of got interrupted. Miguel and I were talking like, this is a huge miss. Like, you've been there 14 years. You've got this incredible story. You put your time in. It's like you never. A lot of times, like, you're sitting in, the West Coast right now. A lot of those fighters are given things. They're given opportunities because they're close to it. No one's ever given you a single thing ever.
Yeah. Thanks, brother. Thanks for recognizing that and being aware, because I don't want to come out and badmouth people. It's like, look, I could easily be in there fighting and still competing. It just didn't go my way. Instead of bitching and complaining, I got an opportunity to make a little bit more money than what I'm making now, and a shot at $1 million, and people are tuned in. Like, I'm putting my story out there. I think really people are like, even the love that I got, because people thought like I got fired, and then it got out there. It's like, no, he chose to part ways. He decided to go his own route. And I love that. And the fans were just like, wow, like, this is the reality. You want to be a fighter. This is it. This is those like, hey, I'm glad I learned a hard lesson when someone didn't pay me back in the day. This is it. All I can do is just give my heart, give my best, keep marching forward. Opportunities are ahead, and we have a long way to go. And if I die tomorrow, I know that I always gave my best and put it out, and I can rest easy.
Awesome. Jeremy,
good stuff,
you're
man.
Savage, brother.
Can't wait to see you fight again, my man.
Yep.
Hey, love you guys, man. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate you.
Well, Mike, we got another one in the books, and I don't know. Jeremy Stevens has got me up there for the most candid interview. Like, he was just, hey, giving it straight from the hip, man. Love it, man. I knew I'd like the guy, and I like him even more than I thought I'd like him.
Think about this. His mom has never seen him fight. The guy's got 50 fights. He's fought all over the world. His mom has never seen him fight live. Wow.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you added all that stuff on there at the end, because my mom's never seen me fight either, but I've never fought anywhere all over the world. No, none of that. So
no, I mean, he was incredibly candid. And I think this is one of those interviews that, we look back on and say we're really proud of.
Yeah, what makes me, all kidding aside, he fought a decade and a half for the UFC, and it really feels like they underutilized this guy, because like, this guy has like little role model potential, and he's got a good backstory. He presents himself real well. Like, Mike, what's my saying? He checks off a lot of boxes, right?
Man, he does.
But he does. 15 years. Doesn't it feel like they underused him? Like, yeah, roll them out as the B-side. We get a great fight, and then it's like, yeah, thanks, Jeremy. And then put no money into marketing and put no, I can't say I get it. I can't say I get it. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, Miguel, our podcast only exists based on the fact that the fighters that we highlight and really kind of get to know, their story's never been told. So, yeah. And that's it. Like if their story was told properly, we wouldn't exist. And, that's kind of like why we're here. Like when you and I were doing other podcasts before, we'd always thought, man, we got to do something about history. It's a void that hasn't been filled. And, and Chris kind of was the glue to kind of bring us all together. We're all historians. It's like, this stuff needs to be documented. And I'm really, really proud of, really covering, a fighter like Jeremy, who doesn't get nearly the amount of respect that he deserves.
Yeah, exactly. Like a hard worker and a guy that still kind of going strong in terms of, I'm not too worried about Jeremy Stephens. Like, oh man, I hope he doesn't, fade away or go into, bitter in a basement. You know what I mean? And like a lot of old boxing stories, like we bring up, he's a positive guy and was from the very beginning, learn those mental lessons. So they're like a role model type of guy. Like I'd show my kid that interview and be like, this is a guy you can imitate.
Well, and it's like sometimes the hardest lessons to learn are the ones that you have to live through. And growing up in that type of environment, do you know how much easier it would be just to, take a 12-pack and eat some pills every single night? Like that would be so much easier. Like you tune yourself out. Okay, you're going from house to house, but you're constantly medicating. When you're sitting at the end of a bar doing nothing with your life, it's a lot harder than staying sober that same amount of period of time. Really is. I got a ton of respect for him.
It's just where are you putting the focus? What's your aim and goal? And if that's not clear, he had it clear, and he had it clear when he was young.
Grandpa. Wow.
So yeah.
That's a hero. I mean, that's the very definition of a hero.
A man after your own heart.
Yeah. So ladies and gentlemen,
thank you, Jeremy. Thank you.
Yep. Please like, share, subscribe. It really, really helps us out. And I've got April 8th, 115 Bourbon Street on the south side of Chicago. I'm doing commentary there. And April 16th, sign up through Smooth Comp. I'm in Orlando, Florida. I'll be hosting the Abu Dhabi Jiu-Jitsu tournament in Orlando. Please, 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 by supporting us or our show or the things that we're involved with, the Lights Out Bourbon or bare knuckle boxing, inevitably it helps all of us. It allows this podcast to exist. So, we appreciate everybody's love and support that we've been getting in the comment section.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.